Hi, my name is Darrin Thornton, and I'm an assistant professor of music at the Penn State School of Music. Today I'd like to talk to you about lifelong musical learning and how we as teachers can teach toward that concept of lifelong music learning. I'd first like to start by setting the stage for lifelong learning by starting with our heroes, who are the adults who have continued to be engaged musically. Characteristics of adults who are musically engaged generally involve this notion that music is a natural part of life. It has been since the beginning of ancient human time. More relevantly, now, the choice in adults' busy lives to be engaged in things with their discretional time is a very important thing. And those who choose to do musical things with that time are making very specific choices for very specific reasons. Adults tend to engage in music in one of two ways. First, what I call direct K-12 extensions of musical engagement, like band, choir, and orchestra. Then there are the many indirect K-12 extensions of music that adults tend to engage with that may not have been taught to them directly in their music training K through 12, but they're using those skills now in order to engage in music the way they want to. When adults are asked why they engage in music, many of them answer in these following ways. The first category is quality of life issues. It helps me breathe better. It helps me feel alive. It helps me engage with others around me. It gives me a sense of community. There's a sense of meaningful purpose and fulfillment in their engagement that they talk about. It provides a connection again to their humanity is another category. And a large one is identity, particularly with people in the retirement phase of their lifespan, where they have been known as an accountant or known as a doctor, and now they've retired, and this musical engagement gives them an identity and a group of people with which to identify. So how musically engaged adults continue to learn is a question that we as teachers in K-12 settings should consider, because adults tend to continue their learning musically in formal settings, self-directed settings, and community settings. Much like many of our students in K-12 settings, they have the formal settings with us and maybe in a church organization or other formal honor groups. They have many self-directed settings, especially if you consider listening to be an engaged musical activity. And then there's the many community settings that students are engaged in as well. So this really does parallel what adult learners and engagers are doing as well. And we need to make those lines a little bit more apparent. So I asked this question. After pondering that question, I'd like for you to take a moment to work through this activity in a small group. So just list 4 to 5 examples of which you consider to be musical life skills that you would like all of your students to know before they left your charge and went out into the world. And then share 1 or 2 of your group's findings with the larger group. And then hold on to those because we're going to use them later in the exercise. This quote by Manti and Tucker depicts a perceived gap between what students consider to be real-life music and the music that they study in school. This depiction of that gap, again, paints the picture of the void that we need to close in regard to the relationship of in-school music and out-of-school music as we move forward and toward a concept of teaching toward lifelong musical learning. I propose action that builds musical life skills into our curriculum as teachers as well as our assessment processes. Teaching toward lifelong music engagement has 3 main components that I think are important. First, you need to encourage a value for lifelong music engagement. You do this by preparing learning experiences which contain personal desire on the part of your students and your students' interests. You also give students the opportunities to acquire this knowledge and those skills that will enable them to participate successfully in a variety of meaningful musical experiences in their lives now, as well as in their lives as adults. The second major component of teaching toward lifelong engagement is focusing on the process. Processes within music making, including listening, provide opportunity for us to illustrate the transfer between learning in various settings. So in school versus real life. We're doing the same musical skills in both. And you're the same person, and what you're doing here is related to what you're doing there. As you plan music experiences that allow for this transfer to be apparent, you want to do so in many music making opportunities, both in school and out of school. Focusing on this process allows educators to readily accommodate the music in the real world into their K-12 illustrations, examples, even repertoire from time to time. And what is learned and owned in this process orientation by the students sticks with them longer as learning that they remember and feel capable of doing, which transfers into adult life. The most important point within this thread is the fact that we as teachers need to more readily make these lines between what we're doing in school and what happens in real life music much more apparent. So draw bold lines in unabashed ways with your students, their parents, your community, your senators, so on and so forth. This quote by Jillison illustrates her thinking relative to how we as teachers should think of our students now as we're preparing them for the future. At this point, I'd like to return to those musical life skills that you identified earlier and have you work through this exercise of drawing direct connections for future music engagement in life from the activities that you've identified, and also to discuss ways that you are or hope to, as a teacher, planning for these connections and making them transparent to students and the community. Then you can report out in a large group. I hope that you found that exercise to be illuminating, and I'd like to leave you with this diagram on teaching toward lifelong music education, which has on the left side both in-school experiences plus out-of-school experiences for the student right now equals in-life experiences that promote lifelong engagement. So if we get them to understand the connection now and realize that they're already being musical in a real-life way, that hopefully that will transfer to their thinking as adults when they consider music as a way of enjoying their life more fully. Thank you.